Hey everyone, welcome to Fansview Fridays. Today we'll be covering Sugoi Con, which is in Erlanger, Kentucky. Never heard of it. Anyway, this is what we're going to be covering. This convention took place on November 10th through 12th, 2000. If this is your first time checking us out on Fansview Fridays is a trip through time where we go through Kevin Lillard's old Fansview reports. Fansview was a very instrumental website in the early days of fandom. In the early days of fandom, we didn't really have Instagram. We didn't really have TikTok to share our cosplay photos. We didn't even have we didn't even have our phones to take camera photos of our cosplays, if that makes any sense. So a lot of us had to rely on cosplay photographers. Some of us had disposable cameras. Some of us had digital cameras. But this is 2000. We really appreciated any time that Kevin would take a photo of us in cosplay, and Kevin was a very inclusive kind of guy. He didn't mind if you were an old cosplayer, young cosplayer, if you bought your costume, made your costumes from scratch, or if you went Scarlett O'Hara and you took a bunch of curtains and made a costume into it. That's what I love about Kevin Lillard. This is what I love about this time period, because he would take photos of everyone, and his website really spoke of cosplay is for everyone. So with that said, we're going to go through Sugoi Con 2000 over in Kentucky. And yeah, let's go through each event. Here we go. Artist Steve Bennett and Robert DeJesus, after his wedding, were at the anime convention held near Cincinnati, Ohio. Studio Iron Cat spoke about plans for 2001. Yes, this page has spent a lot of time listening to presentations by Studio Iron Cat, but that's because the Virginia small publisher goes to a lot of conventions and does a lot of work. With occasional actor established artist Doug Smith joining Steve Bennett, things have already changed with a new look to the company's cover art. However, those changes and others have meant that Iron Cat's October and November titles will be a couple weeks late. The month of October was just hell for us, Bennett said. Something that had started as a joke is gaining momentum and is going to turn into a serious project at Iron Cat. When the company noticed that large number of costumers at conventions, such as the women wearing the outfit of one of the Sugoi Con mascots that Bennett designed, the Iron Cat office staff joked that they should have a costuming calendar. That offhand suggestion is not turning into a real calendar, but the company recruiting potential calendar girls and guys in cat costumes through its website. It's not just the ladies, Bennett noted. A lot of guys wrote in saying, "Can we do an Iron Cat costume?" Iron Cat has a lot of projects in the works, such as Special Force title, being co-produced with ADV Films, but they won't talk about other concepts, including one super secret book that, well, they won't even hint at the title. However, they're getting ready to release more of the Vampire Princess Miu series and the newer Vampire Princess Yui series, and they like to follow up that the convention trip from the creator of those series. Bennett said that Narumi Kakunuichi is interested in visiting North American fans, and Iron Cat has talked her into attending an anime convention in 2001. The number of Miu and Larva cosplayers is helping convince Kakunoichi to head to North America, he said. There was a chat about the many flavors of Macross. Alright, what flavor are we going for? Because I like a side of plus, thank you very much. When fans of Macross, the Fortress Beyond Space and Time, gathered at SugoiCon, they covered a whiteboard with continuing timeline of various Macross series, among other things. The gathering showed that the Macross brand name has a lot of impact on North American anime fans, attracting them with its blend of pop music and mecha. It also showed that it takes some effort to sort through the Macross convolutions of the last 15 years, part of Shoujo Kawamori's efforts to constantly reinvent the series. Translator Neil Needleman has spent much of his career turning much of Macross into English from Macross 2 and Macross Plus to the original series, now under the restoration of Anime Ego. Yes, the series does serve to sell mecha toys and music soundtracks, and the Macross 7 series was goofy in Neil's opinion, but Neilman still likes the shows, even if he wonders about the characters like Basara, the Firebomber guitarist. He is a guy who believes that any fight can be stopped as long as everyone listens to his music. Neilman noted that character who flies a space fighter by playing his guitar. Dina Weaver, Macross fan, who also happens to be the Sugoi Con chairman, tried to guide fans through the complicated Macross saga, which always seems to come back with someone singing, space battles, and mysterious energy source called protoculture, or something pretty much like it. Kawamori does a pretty good job of putting a story into it, Weaver said about the many versions of Macross. One thing is certain, with the release of the restored versions of Macross from Anime Eigo and Robotech from ADV Films, Macross seems to be the North American equivalent of Gundam in Japan, a series that will never end. Robert DeJesus spoke about getting started in art and finding a job. So how did Robert DeJesus get the reputation as a video game artist as well as a comics artist? When he spoke to fans at Sugoi-Con, DeJesus said it was an old-fashioned matter of being in the right place in the right time. He also said that the game art might not be as lucrative as it seems from the outside. That's different from Japan, where many anime and manga artists have left those industries to find work with gaming companies. In DeJesus' case, he was in the right position to make some inroads when PlayStation Magazine was searching for an artist to create a mascot that would illustrate its section on Japanese games. As DeJesus tells the story, the magazine was dissatisfied with the first candidate, so they turned to noted comic artist Adam Warren, who also took a shot at the mascot assignment and decided against taking the job. DeJesus' name came up and he submitted samples and got the job. I didn't own a PlayStation at the time, he added. For DeJesus, game work won't be a full-time job until the correct opportunity comes along. He said that he was offered a post as a game character designer for a West Coast game company, but found that the job didn't offer enough salary to get him to move to California, so DeJesus stays in Indiana, handling his current line of illustration work, which eventually will include a Studio Iron Cat book co-produced with Steve Bennett. Here are the first Kentucky costumers.
Yeah.
Alright. Our follower girl has met. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Alright, let's take a look at some followers here at Sugoi-Con. I'm so elated. Yay, 300. Okay, so we have a couple cosplayers here. Oh, I dig that hero cosplay. Got Zex Marquis, Vash. Not sure what this is, but it's definitely giving Y2K vibes right there. With the plaid skirt, wings, headgear. Yay! Thank you so much for the 300th. Thank you so much, Rodimus, for joining us in for Sugoi-Con. Okay, just scrolling through all the costumers here. Have Amelia from Slayers. Looks like we got Zealous. It's a secret. Or as I noted back then, it's sort of a himi something. My bad. You can correct me in the chat. You can correct me in the comments. Either way, you keep me engaged. I got Zelgoddess. Okay, just scrolling through here. We got Seiya. Then we also got Luna. Okay. Alright, I'm going to take a quick break here for a moment. I will be right back. Until then, here's an advert for KenyobiCon. I am a virtual guest for KenyobiCon. This is a convention that takes place in the Bay Area, and next Friday, that's right, a week from now, I will be a virtual guest talking to you about the history of Sailor Moon. And with that said, I will step out in 1 second. All right, we are back. All right, Kentucky costuming continued on Saturday. Okay, let's check this out here. We got Rana, we got Zex over here. Got Inuyasha, got Mononoke. I also love just seeing like just some of the old like dealers hall photos, like just kind of like what convention hotels looked like at the time. Because yeah, that wood paneling and like fall colors, grandma colors kind of carpet just really speaks to like the hotel aesthetics of the time. Oh yeah, and check out those like giant blocky PCs in the background that could be used for registration. Yeah, in the chat, Rodimus Prime be like, man, that guy was a Janai at every East Coast con back then. Okay, just scrolling through. I assume that's Professor Tomo, maybe? Got Lady Un. I am also working on a Lady Un cosplay. We got Seiya. Got Faye and Spike. Yeah, Bebop was slowly just kind of like making its way to the U.S. at the time, and this is before Bebop showed up on Toonami. Because I was also, oh, we got a Sailor Mew, Sailor Mars. I was just talking about Sailor Mew as I was recording my broadcast for next week. It's really interesting just how you have like different tracks of the Sailor Moon fandom at the time. Like, obviously, I was like on the track of like, yeah, I've already seen the entire original series prior to the Toonami broadcast, whereas a lot of other like, younger millennials, elder Gen Z, saw the Toonami release. And then by that time, I was already into like, yeah, I'm curious about the Sailor Moon musicals. Luckily, my local Japanese video store had the Sailor Moon musicals. I don't know, maybe I just kind of started off with the wrong one. So for the longest time, I just couldn't get into it. Like the storyline, from what I gathered, was like, hey, we're stuck on a desert island. There are cats here. You would think I would like a storyline like that, but I'm like, nah. But I saw one that was recommended to me that the video store did have, and it was the one where they go up against this vampire. It's like it's a vampire by the name of Alucard, and their sailor Astarte. And I just thought like the whole Egyptian mythology involved with that. I thought that was pretty cool. I remember I was supposed to be a sailor Astarte and a sailor Saturn for a Sailor Mew group that was based out in Colorado. Just kind of scrolling through here. I actually recognize this trio right here. They were in the documentary Otaku Unite. It's streaming for free on YouTube. Hey, looks like we got Mulan over there. Or could be Noriko. Who knows? Aw, we had some broken links. So sad. Yep, they were in Otaku Unite. Yeah, I remember them being interviewed. Like, yeah, it was just so typical of like a lot of burly men just dressing up in women's clothing. Like, just giving like the shy girl kind of part. That was a wild documentary. I kind of want to watch it again because it's just such a time capsule of like what it was like in the early 2000s, late 90s for like Gen Xers to experience fandom. So, you want to write your own story about characters and situations in your favorite anime series, but there are already been dozens of stories from other fan fiction authors. How do you come up with something original and make the story entertaining? Fan fiction authors talked about that at SugoiCon. Stan Bundy, who specialized in Robotech stories, said he was reading messages from a Robotech mailing list, listening to a radio station, and heard Scarborough Fair by Simon and Garfunkel that inspired a new storyline. So Minmay is going to make flower crowns for Zentradi? Sorry, I had to. However, Ryan Matthews warned that the good ideas don't mean good stories. You have to ask yourself, why are you writing? Some authors will talk about how they need to create characters whose motivations and actions are revealed to the readers. Matthews likes the idea of using mysterious characters. He spoke about a villain he created for his story, a cold sociopath. I didn't want the readers to know what was going on inside his head, Matthews said. That villain drew compliments from readers of the story. Steve Cornett said fan fiction is easy to create for a series where all the possible stories have not been told by the original curators. Specifically, the continuity gaps are great for fanfic writers who can jump on the gaps and fill them with their own ideas. Cornett said his ideas come from anywhere. One was revealed to him while he was driving down a road. That comes from life experience, just working and seeing the world, Cornett said. Sometimes I'll pop at ya. Matt K. Miller explained the English language Tenchi world. Okay, Tenchi Masaki nearly was James Bond Jr. Uh, that's what fans at Sugoi learned from Matt K. Miller, the actor who performs the English language version of the lead male character from the Tenchi Muyo series. Miller appeared on the panel discussion with Doug Smith, artist and actor. A couple years before he got the Tenchi role, Miller auditioned for the lead role in the short-lived James Bond Jr. animated cartoon, and to hear him say it, Miller nearly got the role. That led to some incidental roles and more auditions, and then the Tenchi lead role lasted for 7 years of dubs, over 63-minute episodes, and 3 movies. Some voice actors always liked the sound of the characters, but not Miller. His regular speaking voice is pitched far lower and than the adolescent Tenchi voice. It becomes second nature to you even months later, Miller said about voicing Masaki. He has a secret to generating those energetic performances in a recording booth. Miller absolutely must have a water bottle and something to fidget with, usually a paper clip. One fan tossed the sub versus dub question at Miller. It's just a matter of preferences, Miller answered. I hope we do a good English version. There are no jarring inconsistencies. Making the dubs work requires someone who knows how to write a decent script, such as Jack Fletcher, who worked on the Tenchi scripts and other dubs considered among the best in the industry. Even so, the actors still need to make the script fit in the limited time offered by the original animation, and talking fast doesn't always work. The Tenchi characters have been treated as a repertory troupe of actors by AIC, the production company which has made several separate Tenchi series with the same characters but with different continuities. Will there be more Tenchi in the future? Miller isn't the closest person to the situation, but he said he's heard there may not be any more Tenchi series. We'll see about that. The creator of Love Drive definitely is a woman. What gave that away? Because of her pen name, some think of the creator of the Love Drive erotic manga published by Studio Iron Cat is a man. However, it was very clear at Sugoi-con that Akira Gajo, on the left, flanked by Iron Cat's Steve Bennett, is a woman. So why the masculine sounding name? She explained she liked the sound of Akira, and Gajo is one of the Japanese words that can for castle or fortress. But Gajo was firm in saying that she didn't want people to think she was a man. She noted that female manga artists can be very uninhibited in their stories, noting that there were younger artists whose stories were more explicit than hers. So, how does she create the erotic stories of Love Drive? Gajo said she has to keep both men and women in mind when she creates stories. She admits that men and women, enjoy the stories in different ways. I ask my friends what fantasies they have, then the editors let me know what they want, and I create a story, she said. Gajo always draws with the Japanese MTV channel on her TV set and likes R&B and hip-hop videos the best. Gajo has a direct link to artist Ippongi Bang. She worked for Bang as an assistant and got a chance to create her own books. It was while visiting Bang's studio that Iron Cat officials noted Gajo's works and decided to publish them in North America. The artwork has to be uncensored to reverse the limitations required in Japan, and often storylines are banned. Gajo said that if there is a notorious crime story in the news, similar manga stories are not allowed for a while. The most distinctive part of Gajo's art style is the eyes of her characters, large even by manga standards. It's whether or not I can go get the correct expression out, she said about the eyes. I try to use lines to express the emotion I want to convey, and yes, the eyes are still important in erotic manga that emphasizes other body parts. A new manga concept faces a piracy challenge. Alright, what is this concept? Chibi Pop Manga was one of the first to try to make the transition from print to online distribution of manga. Comics One is trying a new approach to the idea of getting manga to fans without using ink and paper. Most online manga has used the common JPEG image format. Comics One will distribute some supplies in that format, but they're planning to sell their books online in a proprietary format. A special viewer is needed to read Comics One's manga because the graphic files are encoded so that they're all impossible to print. The new company will sell dozens of manga series from Japanese artists that have been translated into English. Why go to the trouble of selling manga this way? Anthony Schmuckus of Comics One is worried about piracy and the internet and its potential to swipe profits from companies that will want to build electronic distribution of entertainment. And he wants to avoid the problem of his new company and seeing the amount of copyrighted material that shows up on Usenet news groups and seeing images taken from Japanese games that are sold on CD-ROMs. Schmuckus wants to keep that from happening to Comics One material. Artie Wellen, one of Sugoi Con's staff, questioned the free stuff at all costs ethic that is a big part of the internet. If I like something, I want to give my money to someone so they can keep doing it, Wellen said. How can the pirates do something that endangers what they said they like? Wellen worries that if too much material is pirated, the supply of music and art may dry up and what remains will be more expensive. How kinky is this material from Japan? Oh boy. Alright, let's talk about the sexism in anime panel. And remember, this is from the early 2000s. So this can be a bumpy ride, people. There's a fine line between sexy and sexist in anime, according to Jan Scott Fraser, the animator who spent 15 years dealing with the hang-ups and quirks of that art form and its characters. Anime has a lot of female characters because the plot who make it are men, Fraser said at a Sugoi panel discussion. If you work on something 10 hours a day and you're a guy, would you rather draw men or women? Part of the reason that anime and manga are sexier than cartoons and comics in North America is because the Japanese are more relaxed about sex, Fraser said. But another reason is because the creators of the art aren't inhibited about displaying their preferences, fetishes, on screen and on paper so the audience can share. It's nice when you have fixations, but when a director is using his film to, on screen, it goes so far, said Fraser. She points to a couple of shows that display the creator's preferences. Plastic Little, Fraser isn't the only one to call it plastic nipple. And Amazing Nurse Nanako, it's the most misogynistic thing I've ever seen in the last 12 years, Fraser observed. The kinkier material from Japan tends to be either live action films or in manga. Fraser says is less a matter of sex and control and humiliation, and it has an audience. Again, Japan is outwardly conservative on matters on sex, but there seems to be a wild collection of fantasies in that country. Alright, so why was the stuff from Sugoi Con so messed up? This looks like it's going to be a pretty short report today. Sugoi Con Sunday author's notes. Well, the author screwed up again and put another bad hyperlink on the index page. So it was the author's fault if you couldn't reach the Sugoi stuff on Sunday. But it was the web space provider's fault on Saturday when the site went down for a while, I think. There are plans to bring you a lot more of the inaugural anime convention in Kentucky, but the author made a silly promise to be somewhere else on Sugoi Con Saturday night. Excuses begin here. So the author had to storm out of the convention on Saturday afternoon, rush cross country to talk to people, and eat free food on Saturday evening. Then he rushed back to Kentucky on Saturday night, only to find that the costume contest was over and all the costumers were gone. And the author had to explain why he was wandering in the halls in a rented tuxedo. So that's why there are no costume contest photos from Sugoi Con on this site, the first time in 3 years that has happened. Excuses continue, and there were more real-world work to do on Sunday, so the author had to check out the hotel on Sunday morning, jump into the car on Sunday afternoon, and dash back home to keep the weekly paycheck types happy, almost. It was still worth the effort to hang out with Midwest anime fans. The last time the author was in the Cincinnati area and the trip didn't involve an airplane or a taxi cab, he was at a sci-fi con. Tranquility Base was held in June of 1999 in some presumably expensive space in the downtown Cincinnati Convention Center, drew a couple of hundred people, and was never heard from again. In the meantime, a group of Ohio anime fans decided they wanted to hold their own convention in 2001, but they couldn't wait that long. Instead, SugoiCon got its opening run in mid-November of 2000. The convention ended up in Erlanger, Kentucky, because there was no fun allowed in Cincinnati. That's closer to truth than anyone wants to admit. Years ago, there was a beer named Erlanger. Nowadays, the city is the home chapter of an organization that promotes a collection of beer advertising. The odd sighting of the convention came from a friend who walked up to the author on Friday and said, "I just saw Pete Rose." The former Cincinnati Red Star had just left the Holiday Inn Cincinnati airport a couple of minutes before the author arrived. The author used to head to what was then called the Riverfront Stadium to watch Rose in his prime, but anime conventions are more fun than baseball now. Less expensive too. Rose and other 1970 stars of the Reds spent the part of the weekend signing autographs for $30 to $40 each, cash. No one asked for a dime for autographs at SugoiCon. SugoiCon wasn't just a small event, it was a tiny event. Sci-fi fandom has the phrase "relaxicon" to describe an event which is unhurried, with no pressure and no rushing to get from one event to another. The Kentucky event certainly fit that description, operating in an easygoing fashion. With only 400 people or so on hand for the weekend, things never got crowded. There was enthusiasm and a lot of youthful chattering in the halls, but no real feeling that anyone was going to take themselves or the event too seriously. It was one of the few conventions this year that there was no wait for the elevators. Still, there's plenty of familiar faces, especially those who have built Anime Central. Many of the staff in Illinois' conventions were on hand to help the Kentucky event, and one of the most popular exhibits in the dealer's room was a tape of the Anime Central costume contest. And Akira Gajo was the revelation of this event. To think such an intense erotic fantasies come from a typical appearing woman. So after 14 conventions in 1 year, what's next? First, the author hopes to keep the same pace for the fourth year. Already there are plans to go to the same conventions in 2001 as in 2001. I expect those weekends where favorite events are planned the same weekend. The choice between Anime Weekend Atlanta and Nadeshiko will be a tough decision. Second, the conventions keep growing and the numbers of events increases. Fans seem to mind going to the trouble of attending these events. Oddly enough, the largest increase of number of conventions has come in Virginia, which will hold 4 events in 2001. As long as the economy stays good, and whatever presidential administration we get doesn't turn oppressive, conventions should continue to thrive. They'll stay flawed, but they'll remain as special events in a world that too often can be hateful and mundane. Talk about quotes that have aged like fine wine. I'm definitely going to use this quote for upcoming convention reports, and because I just think like this end quote here, just after just reading this, just really says a lot about the world back then and the world now. Again, this was 2000, and this is nearly less than a year before 9/11. And when I read this last paragraph here, I also think about like what the world present day, present time, and conventions these days. It's very surreal to just kind of think of conventions as back then. Yes, it was also an escape from reality, escape from the mundane and the hateful, and also to think of conventions now as like that safe space where we all go to. And then here in the chat, Rodis be like, those were the days, having 5 or 6 conventions in Virginia back then. Yeah, I kind of wish we still had like just maybe 5 major conventions in California alone, because everything is just getting too saturated. I don't mind like a 1 day type event, like, yeah, check out this coffee event that we're hosting type thing. But I just kind of feel like the market is just getting too oversaturated. At least that's what I can say in California. I mean, it's an honor to be a guest at a few of these conventions. I'm very excited about KenyobiCon. Very excited about like some future events that I will be at, such as Filipino Creator Con. But with that said, if you like this era, you can go ahead and you can buy my book, The Fangirl Diaries. Link in the description. There's a few ways where you can purchase my book. Of course, you can get it through Amazon. However, if you would like to support an indie bookstore and if you like a signed copy, I am selling signed copies on Underdog Bookstore. With that said, you can also get a free bookmark in the Underdog bookstore. And definitely check out my book. I'm getting some rave reviews. I'm finally getting the traction that I need in the press. Right now, it's been quite a bit of a slow journey as a debut author, but I know I'm definitely getting there. Just really staying positive that this book is starting to just pick up traction and just get the recognition that it deserves, because this has been a couple of years, a labor of love, just putting my heart and soul into this project. And I hope you too can also enjoy this book as well. With that said, thank you so much for your time. If you have some time on Friday, I will be a guest at KenyobiCon, and also after, also, I will be a featured panelist at Filipino American Creator Con down in San Diego. And likewise, if you are in the San Diego area, if you find yourself there, I'm more than happy to sign a copy of the Fangirl Diaries. And with that said, thank you so much for attending another edition of Fansview Fridays. I know this was a very short broadcast of Fansview Fridays given the circumstances that Kevin had described here. Life happens and we just kind of have to roll with it, right? Thank you so much for checking us out. And with that said, we will see you again at the Wisteria Cottage next Friday at 6 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us.